I'm going to show you how to mix colors to get lighter tints and darker shades. So I started with some green in this cup, and this is going to be our normal hue, and we're going to put it in the middle of this value scale. And I'm just going to paint in the middle here with my green, and it's going to be the color right out of the tube. And notice I put, you know, about the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit more of that color in here, and I'm going to paint in this spot. And if I apply more layers to this or make it thicker, it's going to look a little bit darker itself. And this is acrylic paint, so you want to put it on kind of like frosting. You can put it on nice and thick. It doesn't have to be a wash like watercolor. And this is my normal hue. It's called the color. I'm going to start with my tints here and go from the lightest to the hue, and then from the hue to the darkest in this area. And you're thinking mixing paint, yeah, it's easy to mix the hue plus white to make a tint. But is there a correct way to mix it? Do I put the green into the white, or do I put the white into the green? And no, it's not a trick question. There is actually a good answer. And the correct answer is to use the white into the green. Now, this is a cup of white paint, and you all should have this. This is your sacred white. So sacred white means do not get it dirty. Always use a clean brush to put into it. Don't dip your dirty paintbrush into it, otherwise you're going to contaminate your sacred white. So what I like to do is I like to pour some of the sacred white, the clean, pure stuff, into a cup, about that much, and then put the cover immediately on this one again, so I'm not tempted to dip into this white, and save it so it's clean for later. And we actually do add the darker color to the lighter color. If I was going to add the white into all this green and mix it all together, yes, I would have a lighter green. But in order to be really, really, really light, I would have to keep dumping the white into here to keep getting it lighter and lighter and lighter, and I end up going through a huge bucket full of paint. Conversely, if I take a swab of this green, just a little bit of it, and mix it into my white, it's going to transform this white into a lighter color. And kind of like mixing cookie dough or brownie batter, you want to like wipe the walls to really get it to blend in and really smooth it in. Sometimes you have to like pat the acrylic paint to get it to smooth in. Wipe the walls, and just that little bit of green already transformed this white. Kind of looks like a mint green. And I'm going to take this transformed light color when I think I have it all blended. You can kind of look at the edges too to see if you've blended it all in, kind of wipe it. And yes, normally I would tell you not to get any paint on the metal part of your brush. Keep it all on the brush part. But I know you're going to be washing that really well later on, and it's being used as a mixing tool right now. So if you're a little bit dirty, make sure you wash that all off later. And this lighter color is going to go right here on the very end. Now, as I'm wiping it down, you notice how I didn't blend it in enough, and then it kind of became streaky. So I'm going to try to blend that right now on the paper and get it smooth. So this is my light tint of that color, and it's okay if you didn't change it very much. Now I'm not going to contaminate my green, so I don't want to take this brush and put it in my green and get that all dirty. I'm going to take another brush, another clean brush, and take another swipe or another chunk of this green and mix it into my already tinted green and make it a little bit darker or less of a tint by adding in that color. And there's kind of a chunk in here, so I have to like mash it and mix it and wipe the walls in order for it to change a color into a darker type of green. Now be patient as you're mixing it, because it might not all change at once. You know, you have to really mix it in. If you feel like you need to add more of the green, again, you're going to be tempted to take this brush and dip it into here, but then you contaminate your pure green color. So take another clean brush and dip it into there, and then add it to your white. Okay, and now as I'm mixing this, it is getting darker. It might be hard to tell until you put it on the paper, but you want to really make sure that you have it a little bit darker than the one before it. So I'm going to grab it from here, and I'm going to paint it, and look, is it a little bit darker? I can tell the difference, can you? Right here next to it. Okay, and I did a better job blending that in. It's not as streaky, right? And then the next thing we do is add even more green to it. And, you know, if it didn't change enough for you and you want a good amount, put it on there. And yeah, I just contaminated this brush. I have a lot of dishes to do when I'm done. after I'm done doing this side, I'm gonna have to get fresh brushes for the dark side. So again, blend it really, really well to make sure it's really incorporated. And we wanna get close to the hue color. So I've got a lot of chunks in here that I'm trying to get to blend together nicely. Wiping the walls. If it's not quite the color you want, of course you can add a little bit more, but this is still conserving more paint by adding a little bit of green to it than adding the globs and globs of white we'd have to add to that green to get it to be the light colors that we might want. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more green here, get it blended in. And when I think I have a tone a little bit darker than the one before it, then I'm going to paint it in here. Okay. Oh, that brush is kind of getting globby, so I'm wiping it on the edge so I have a cleaner brush. It's not as sloppy to get a darker color. Okay, so that one's even a little bit closer to the hue. Obviously, I could put a couple more steps in between if I wanted to. All right, when we go to the dark side, we're gonna use fresh brushes or we're gonna clean our brushes. And we're gonna use this hue color now. And again, remember, we're gonna go adding the darker color to the lighter color. It's easier to mix it that way. So I'm gonna take my black now. This is Sacred Black. It hasn't been contaminated, so I need a clean brush. And I am going to add a little bit of this black, or pour it just a little bit. This black can really overtake things quickly. So I just am using a little bit of black here into the green to make it a little bit darker as a shade. And I'm gonna blend it in. And like I said, black can take over really quickly. It can really transform a color fast. So it's always easier to get darker than it is to get lighter. So when I mix that black in, I really wanna make sure I don't put too much at a time. Otherwise I'm gonna come up with pure black or a darker shade, too dark than I wanted it to be. So I mix that in. I have kind of a small brush here to mix with. So I'm kind of like playing with it in the little corner here. And when I get a darker tone of that regular hue, it's a shade, and I'm gonna put it in the next one over. We're going to the dark side now. And in this dark side, we're gonna progressively get darker into the shade. And I'm just gonna fill that in. Some people like to be really neat and in the line. Some people like to make this more free-flowing and a little bit outside of the boxes. Whatever your style is fine. And now I have to make this a little bit darker. So you guessed it, I'm gonna have to add a little bit more black to it. By now I think you understand the process. Put a little bit more in. And again, we don't want to put a dirty brush into our Sacred Black. We wanna keep that pure black, which is why I poured it. And then start mixing that in. And I did get a little bit more black than I wanted to. So I'm gonna really mix that in and combine it so I'm not going instantly dark shade right away. And after I have blended that in pretty well, I'm gonna check, is it darker than the one before it? I would say so. And I'm gonna make it this one even darker now. Fill that in. And then you probably already understand the last one. Ooh, that's a big glob. That's really frosting-like. You might have to smush that around and blend it on the page. Acrylic paint dries really quickly too. So sometimes it gets sticky and it leaves this like cool texture, which is why acrylic paint is a little bit different than watercolor. Watercolor, you can really see through it, and acrylic paint is more opaque and thick. All right, and then add a little bit more for our final one. You can either use your paintbrush or you can pour and get this one really nice and dark. And if you add your paint this way, you're gonna conserve paint. Again, if I tried to pour my green into my black, I would have to add a lot of green, get the whole tube out and start squeezing a ton of green into my black cup just to make it look like a lighter version of black, or a greenish version of black, as opposed to just a little bit of black into the green, and it transforms it a lot quicker. And you save paint, and you save money, and you conserve resources that way. So after I get this darker still, the last step is to paint in that last rectangle with the darker black. So there you go. This is a value scale with a color hue in the middle, tints on the left, and shades on the right. Go ahead and give it a try. Make sure you put the covers on all your containers when you're done, and wash out your brushes really well.